Greetings and welcome to this rather large video review of the Warhammer Underworlds starter set and the Essentials pack of cards for Warhammer Underworlds. As always, thanks to Games Workshop for providing these to review for free. But still, I aim to always be impartial, honest, and constructive. Before I go back to the video at hand, please remember to like and subscribe and comment, seeing what you liked and what you didn't. And if you prefer written content, I've covered all of these as individual articles, which you can find in the episode description below. Warhammer Underworlds has launched a new starter set called the Warhammer Underworlds Starter Set. I guess Doomrune was taken, and Shadespire too? Anyway, this new starter set is aimed mainly at new players, being a new way to get into Warhammer Underworlds in a more general manner. This starter set is missing some stuff like universal cards, but I'll cover that in a little bit. A big question people will ask is, do we actually need this when seasonal core sets exist? Well, that's a difficult question to answer, dear viewer. Personally, I think so. Warhammer Underworlds is getting very difficult to get into as a new player, and the casual scene is almost dead for the game at the time of Diachasm. A new starter set to let people jump in at any time is always good in my books. Now on to some quickfire questions. Question: will the contents for the starter set and the Essentials pack be legal for competitive play like in Championship format? Yes. I'm sure Games Workshop will update the competitive format documents to officialize it, but everything will be legal. They wouldn't make stuff for the game that you just couldn't use. What about rotation? Well, the products in here should all be immune to rotation, as they're basically designed to be kind of like evergreen products, which should stay in competitive usage for a long time, so they will be worth your purchase. Will the Warbands inside the starter set be made separately available? Unlikely, as the Champions of Dreadfane Warbands have still not been broken down, despite being out for a long time as well. So if you want the Warbands, you have to get the starter set. The starter set contents come with the main staples you'd expect from a Warhammer Underworld starter set. You get 2 double-sided game boards, 2 warbands, 2 32-card power decks, dice, which are from Shadespire, and then cards and tokens to use in your games. You also get the rulebook, which I'll cover shortly. Overall, the rules remain unchanged generally. If you want a more in-depth look at the core rules of Warhammer Underworlds, why don't you check out one of my core set reviews like the Diachasm one, which you can find in the episode description below. The rulebook covers all the general rules you need to know from setup, fighter actions, and card rules. Notable missing segments are lethal hexes, feature tokens, the scatter mechanic, magic, and different types of objectives, namely hybrids and duels. Some of these exclusions make sense, but I questioned the exclusion of hybrid and dual objectives as well as lethal hexes and feature tokens. Does it mean these mechanics will be removed from future seasons of Warhammer Underworlds? Unlikely. I still feel these were made to streamline the game and for new players, but it feels a little odd still, personally. The boards in the starter set are great to have back in circulation for competitive play. If you want a full review of them, check out my Warhammer Underworlds game boards article, which you can find in the episode description below. The boards found within the starter set are the Shiashian Star Dial, the Mirror Well, the Cursed Oubliette, and the Soul Refractor. All of these are really good boards, and you can use your older versions if you have them, as they're reprints from Shadespire and Nightvolt. Unfortunately, each of these reprinted boards doesn't mirror their original counterparts in terms of what boards they were partnered with, but it's just a minor concern. So basically, the Shiashian Star Dial and the Mirror Well were originally separate boards, they're now together. So if you wanted to use them in your old collection, you're technically going to have to bring them separately. Do you want to bring 4 double-sided game boards or 2? It's up to you. The warbands that come within the starter set are the Storm of Celestus and Drepur's Wraithcreepers. I'll cover these warbands now, and I'll put timestamps as always where you can go for the Storm of Celestus or the Drepur's Wraithcreepers. Or if you don't want to review them, you can skip them as well, but this is basically all of the starter set as it has no universal cards. For the Storm of Celestus, the narrative begins with the Storm of Celestus being sent to find out and investigate the bleeding effects of Shadespire by Sigmar himself. The cause and reach of this dimensional bleeding had to be found in order to prevent the threat of Nagash spreading even further. The castigators knew their mission would likely never end, but they gladly march forwards in the name of Sigmar. The Storm of Celestus are another 4-fighter warband. The warband consists of Drakan Celestus, Melissan Starsighted, Aethys the Brave, and Sleek. These Stormcast Eternals are once again from the Sacrosanct Chamber like Ironsoul's Condemners and Stormside's Cursebreakers, sent to deal with the deathly forces of Nagash. The Storm of Celestus echo the hallmarks of the Chamber with their ornate trinkets and robes. My favourite fighter is Sleek, and he should be your favourite too. He's loyal, useful, and isn't draped in armour and robes. He's also a very good boy. The miniatures come in Stormcast Blue. It's fine. Miniatures go together quite well for an easy to build Age of Sigmar kit, but I find you still need to clip off some pegs here and there. Otherwise, they can be easily painted separately from the base, and are sturdy once built. For the fighters, the Storm of Celestus are a 4-fighter warband, which push them closer towards the elite spectrum of warband size. As a 4-fighter warband, the Storm of Celestus occupies a great space in terms of defensive and offensive deployment, while also helping you to use your activations more efficiently, e.g. 1 activation per 1 fighter each round. The fighters generally share a movement characteristic of 3, 4 wounds, and 1 block defense. All the Stormcast have Thunderhead Greatbows. These are all range-free, 2 smash, 2 damage, with the important effect that they can only be fired once per phase. While strong and accurate, each fighter basically has only 1 shot with these per round, which can result in some feel-bad moments if you miss. However, this helps offset their awesome damage and threat range. The Stormcast also inspire after a successful Thunderhead Greatbow attack action. This should be fairly reliable, but it also means each fighter only has the chance to inspire once per round, which can be incredibly limiting if you miss. Sleek is very unique, but I will cover him separately. Drakan Celestus, in addition to his Thunderhead Greatbow, has his heavy stock, which is range 1, 2 smash, and 2 damage. Celestus Inspired has his heavy stock increased to 3 smash. He gains 2 block, and while is holding an objective, Celestus cannot be driven back. It's a nice inspired side, and you generally want it for the 2 block. Melissan Starsighted has her Crushing Kick. This is range 1, 2 smash, and 1 damage. Melissan Inspired has her Crushing Kick increased to 2 damage with knockback 1. She also gains the ability of +1 attack dice while holding an objective. This is so huge. 3 smash Thunderhead Greatbow, but also any of other of her attack actions too. This is really super strong. She does remain at 1 block, however. Aethys the Brave has his Shoulder Barge like Wario. This is range 1, 3 fury, 1 damage, and knockback 1. Aethys Inspired has his Shoulder Barge increased to 2 damage. While holding an objective, Aethys can reroll 1 defense dice. It's fine, but he's still only 1 block. Inspiring isn't really necessary for Aethys, just an alright bonus. Sleek is your Griffhound, armed with Beacon Claws, which are range 1, 3 fury, and 1 damage. Sleek cannot have attack action upgrades, but can, oddly, hold objectives. With his movement of 4, it makes him quite the speedy objective grabber. Sleek's main power comes from his Warning Cry reaction ability. You can only make this reaction ability once per phase after an opponent declares an attack action while within 2 hexes of Sleek. You can then give 1 guard token to each friendly fighter within 1 hex. This is really good, although requires a lot of setup to give guard tokens to everyone at once. Here is one setup that is quite doable. Special thanks goes to WAFLab for the image. Even if you can't get multiple fighters on guard at once, protecting a key fighter who is on an objective is amazing. Warning Cry is basically a free buried instinct. It can even block enemy reaction windows too. Sleek Inspired has his Beacon Claws gain and snare. He also goes up to movement 5 and 2 dodge. It's nice, but you mainly want it for the boosted movement and defense. For faction objectives, Bulwark Against the Dark is 1 glory for having each friendly fighter with 1 or more upgrades each. If the Storm of Celestus were a 3-fighter warband, then this would be much better, otherwise I would just pass. Lightning Strike is a faction assassinate, 1 glory for having an enemy leader out of action. Alright, but not reliable. Shining Heroes is 1 glory for having all of your fighters inspired. It's just too hard to score consistently with that tight inspire condition of the Stormcast. Lightning Strike is a faction assassinate, 1 glory for having an enemy leader out of action. Alright, but not reliable. Shining Heroes is 1 glory for having all of your fighters inspired. It's just too hard to score consistently with that tight inspire condition of the Stormcast. For faction objectives top picks, Advancing Storm is a surge you score for taking an enemy fighter out of action with a range 1 attack action. It seems limiting on paper, but your Thunderhead Greatbows help set this up, and the Warband has access to some decent range 1 attacks. Plus, any good range 1 attack action upgrade will help here a lot. Balanced Strategy is a surge you score after an opponent's activation if you hold objectives 4 and 2 for 2 glory. It's a little difficult to score due to the fair reaction window, but that 2 glory is just too good to pass up. Bold Claim is a surge you score for 2 glory, but instead if you hold objectives 1, 3 and 5. This is much more difficult to score, and you may want to just run Temporary Victory instead, but this 2 surge glory is just too tempting to pass for me. Needs investment for lots of guard tech, yet the payoff will be great. Crucial Objective is 1 glory as a surge for holding objectives 2 or 4. Technically it should be a hybrid too, but this is just so damn good, always take. Great Purification should also be a hybrid, but as a warband that wants to be in objectives, Faction Supremacy or kill 4 fighters for 3 glory is just good. It helps if you have been on the offensive as well, and when against Horde or Swarm warbands. Here We Stand is for holding 2 objectives for 1 glory. It's simple and reliable end phase glory. Point Blank. Pow! Right in the kisser! Fire any range 3 plus attack action at an adjacent enemy fighter for 1 glory as a surge if it is successful. It doesn't even have to be a Thunderhead Greatbow attack. Simple and generally easy to score once you get supports as well. Righteous Banishment is 1 glory for having 2 or more enemy fighters out of action. Once again, this is easy glory which the Storm of Celestus can score quite easily depending on the matchup. Zone of Banishment is so good. Score 2 glory in any end phase if there are no enemy fighters in your territory. Not so great now due to the surge of aggro, but anyone going first who buys their time for too long will be giving you 2 glory for free. It's amazing. For Faction Gambits, Distracting Shot causes -1 attack dice to your opponent in their next activation. It's alright, but the bigger question is, how do you play this if your fighters have already shot their Thunderhead Greatbows? It's a minor funny thing that I like to always point out. Healing Tempest is a faction healing potion. Heal 1 to 2 wounds. It's fine, but run consistently only at your own discretion. If getting damage for was more difficult now in Diachasm, then this would be an auto-include. Stalwart Defense is once again just fine, +1 defense for friendly fighters holding objectives in your opponent's activation. For Faction Gambit's top picks, Aetheric Channeling is an amazing buff Gambit ploy. In your next activation, your first range 3 plus attack action has either +1 dice, cleave or ensnare. Just so good and a great way to ensure inspiring / getting an attack to succeed. Channeled Step may sound confusing at first, but it's basically an objective teleport. You can only play this while holding an objective if there are no enemy fighters within 2 hexes. Then place that fighter on another objective hex anywhere on the board as long as there are no enemy fighters within 2 hexes of that new objective. Has a lot of counterplay with the opponent by babysitting certain objectives, but the mobility this card offers is amazing. Concerted Consolidation is an interesting sidestep. Up to 2 friendly fighters in your territory can be pushed 1 hex towards the nearest objective. Use this to secure your end phase and any objective holding objectives in general. Greatbow Block reduces the damage dealt by 1 to any Stormcast in your opponent's activation except for poor Sleek. This card becomes even better if Sleek is out of action, as it's surprise damage negation that your opponent can't really prepare for. Lightning Flare is good but situational. Your opponent cannot target your fighters in their activation unless they are adjacent to them. A bit moot currently with all the speed about right now, but corralling your opponent's movement like this has very strong possibilities with the right setup. Raise the Alarm. +1 dice against enemy fighters with charge tokens in your next activation. Easy and another good way for more accuracy buffs. Swift Step is a buff sidestep. Push a Stormcast 1 hex or Sleek up to 2 hexes instead. Great for objective grabbing and mobility. For faction upgrades, Cautious Advance is Duelist Speeds. Yay! For Aphis. Just take Duelist Speed instead. Cool Head is Faction Awakened Weapon for Millicent only. It's good, but only run if you plan to make a lot of use out of her. Loyal Companion is for Sleek and lets him react to another friendly fighter's activation to push him up to 2 hexes so they are adjacent. If you cannot do this, this reaction cannot be played. It's fine, but it's not something I'd really like, as Sleek is fast and mobile enough already. Reconqueror is great speed, but lets you push the equipped fighter 1 additional hex as long as it finishes on an objective hex. Nice, but Duelist Speed and Savage Speed give you more utility. For faction upgrades top picks, Concussive Cloud is a range 3 2 smash and 1 damage attack with knockback 1, which gives a move token to the target on a successful attack. It's a really nice move token application and gives you more consistent ranged output. I'll Cover You is a great support upgrade. Can only go on a Stormcast, but as long as they haven't made a Thunderhead Greatbow attack action, they count as a friendly supporting fighter to any friendly fighter within 3 hexes when they are attacked. Really good, although you need to be more careful with who you attack with to get the maximum usage. Longshot is great. +1 range to Thunderhead Greatbows. Range 4 consistently? Yes please. Reconsecrate is a better shard caller. As an action, the fighter can swap one objective token they are standing in for another and then gain a charge token. This hugely improves the reliability of your objectives and can be used on Sleek. Stoic Fortitude is Faction Great Fortitude, always take. Strength of Sigmar is +1 damage to only range 1 attack actions. I'm not sure if you'd actually run this, but Sleek or Celestus would make good use out of this. Now to the deck section. As you know, these are just sample decks for you to build off of, and they're not super competitive but designed to be optimal and fun. As I'm not sure if this warband is legal for Vanguard format, I'll just be making a championship format deck. Remember, you can always just run a deck made of all the faction cards and it should work quite well. The championship format deck is a flex deck with aggro and hold objectives, and you can find the deck link in the episode description below. For objectives, you have your standard mix of aggro and hold objective stuff with mostly hold objective surges. Winged Death is there because you could potentially charge 6 with Sleek, but more likely kill someone at a range 3+ attack action. Then you've got clean kills because generally you'll be focus firing to take people out of action, and you've got Supremacy, and Hidden Purpose and Swift Capture are really solid objectives for this warband just because, you're going to be wanting to be on objectives anyway. For Gambits, once again, it's mostly recovery for hold objectives with like Sidestep, Confusion to actually get objectives you can't stand on, and then Buried Instinct for Surprise Guard, which makes you basically only removable from objectives with Distraction or any other push card. Then you've got Restless Prize to help capturing objectives and securing objectives, as well as, like Raise the Alarm to make it easier to attack against fighters who have charged you. Then finally, the biggest one is No Time, because that basically secures an end phase. Say you're going last in an activation, you're on 3 objectives, your first thing is No Time, straight into the end phase, secure like Supremacy and all that. So helps with recovery in general. For upgrades, it's mostly defensive stuff. You've got like Great Fortitude to stack with Stoic Fortitude, Proud Runner to help with Primacy thanks to Sleek. Then you've got Eagle Eye, which basically gives you Awakened Weapon for all your attacks. Arm to the Teeth, which gives all your range 3 attacks cleave, which is amazing. And then Duelist Speed and Quickening Greaves that basically help you capture objectives, and Quickening Greaves will just always ensure you stay on one objective. So really strong. And then finally, I've just put Concussive Cloud in there because I like that consistent 3 smash 1 damage attack just to pin enemy fighters in place. And yeah, it's really solid, fun deck. For the warband overview, the Storm of Celestus is an interesting warband. They look simple at first, stand on objectives and shoot, but have more just below the surface thanks to their faction cards and and abilities in general. Sleek is a big part of this, either via helping to get on objectives or to give guard tokens to friendly fighters. We've had a lot of warband pets before, but Sleek really is the best in Warhammer Underworlds. Hopefully, future warbands follow this design cue. The Storm of Celestus can fold under pressure though, and inspiring the warband can become especially frustrating if you keep missing with the Thunderhead Greatbows. For the warband pros, they're straightforward and fun to use, can do more complex plays and strategies, great threat range of 6 thanks to their Thunderhead Greatbows, consistent range 3 damage 2 output, and Sleek has a very flexible role and supports the warband as a whole. For warband cons, they can still fold under pressure due to generally only having a single defense characteristic while uninspired. They also have a very rigid inspired condition, which can lead to fighters never inspiring at all. Each Thunderhead Greatbow can only be used once per round, so careful thought needs to be used when taking attack actions with them, and finally they just have poor range 1 damage. In summary, the Storm of Celestus is a great warband to learn how to play Warhammer Underworlds. Not only are they easy to use, but the warband also has a lot of hidden depth, allowing experienced players to get more out of the Storm of Celestus. Impressive, reliable ranged pressure and damage too, with solid durability. They can fold under pressure, especially if their Thunderhead Greatbows miss, and you want to keep fighters near each other in a supportive web. Then there's also Sleek, the most useful warband animal yet. For Drepur's Wraithcreepers, They were originally nobleman hunters who lived only for the hunt. Upon death, Nagash bound them to his service. In their new ethereal forms, Drepur's Wraithcreepers found themselves hunting the denizens of the Mirrored City. However, this is not exactly at their pleasure. They now hunt because they have to, only finding respite from the never-ending desire to kill Nagash's quarry upon a kill. After this fleeting somnolence, they quickly return to their plight as they long for their old mortal bodies and silently weep inside. Drepur's Wraithcreepers are another 4-fighter warband. This warband consists of Viceroy Drepur, the Patrician, Sire Hakfel, and Grodig the Lance. Each miniature is another aspect of the Nighthawk army, with ties to UK pagan mythology. The fighters are a little plain, but my favourite is a Patrician for his drum and the sick beats he drops. First I bang the drum, then I bang your mum. The miniatures come in a ghostly green colour, like the Thorns of the Briar Queen and Lady Harrow's Mournflight. An amazingly green choice. Assembly is a bit annoying due to the aged nature of these easy-to-build Age of Sigmar kits. I find clipping off the pegs helps a lot, but even then there are gaps. However, once assembly is completed, they are fairly sturdy. Key point, remember not to build the Patrician with the optional 4th spear. Give him the drum or you will never be able to hear his sick beats. This is a really bad aspect of using older miniatures, so just be careful and read the instructions before building first. For the fighters, Drepur's Wraithcreepers are a 4-fighter warband, which puts them closer towards the elite spectrum of warband size. As a 4-fighter warband, Drepur's Wraithcreepers occupies a great space in terms of defensive and offensive deployment, while also helping you to efficiently use your activations, with 1 activation per fighter per round. The fighters also generally share a movement characteristic of 3, increasing to 4 when inspired, 4 wounds, and defend on dodge characteristics. A big factor with this warband is that they do not ignore lethal hexes thanks to their intangible rule. They ignore lethal hexes and blocked hexes while moving, but must end their move in an empty hex. While this is a great balancing move, it only makes sense if both the Thorns of the Briar Queen and Lady Harrow's Mournflight get this rule changed too, otherwise it's a bit of a nerf. Another interesting point is that the majority of the fighters in this warband have range 2 attacks. Despite their movement of 3, this still gives them a great threat range of 5 hexes, which makes the warband deceptively slow for people not paying attention. The warband generally shares the same Inspire condition. Drepur's Wraithcreepers inspire at the start of your activation if within 2 hexes of an enemy fighter. This is very easy to do and great. Score after a charge when charged by the opponent or when you charge yourself. It's reliable and strong, very consistent. Viceroy Drepur is the leader of the warband. He has the Hunter's Glaive, despite not being a hunter, which is range 2, 2 smash and 2 damage. He also has 2 dodge as the leader. Drepur Inspired has his Hunter's Glaive go to 3 smash and gained an awakened weapon effect by getting to reroll 1 dice when attacking with this attack action. It's a very good inspired profile, and he basically becomes super accurate with his attack. Just needs some damage buffs. The Patrician is the drummer extraordinaire. He is armed with a Deathly Bite, which is range 1, 3 fury and 1 damage. His real power comes from his Deathbeat reaction. After an opponent's power step, choose 1 friendly fighter and push them 1 hex towards the closest enemy fighter. This offers amazing mobility, triggering basically 4 times a round as long as he is not out of action. He has 2 dodge as well for that extra durability. He also has a unique Inspire condition, which is when all the other friendly fighters are in enemy territory. This means that he's quite slow to inspire, but in a very controlled and reliable condition. The Patrician Inspired has his Deathly Bite increased to 2 damage. More importantly, however, his Deathbeat lets him push 2 friendly fighters at once instead of 1. Crazy! Sire Hakfel has a Hunter's Glaive 2, range 2, 2 smash and 2 damage. 2. He is in a change, 1 dodge and has a wound characteristic of 3, making him quite fragile. Hakfel Inspired gains Cleave on his Hunter's Glaive, which is very nice. He also goes up to 2 dodge, making him quite a little bit better at defense, though he remains at 3 wounds. Grodig the Lance is exactly the same as Sire Hakfel, just, different name. Grodig Inspired gains Ensnare on his Hunter's Glaive, allowing for some nice target flexibility depending on your opponent. Otherwise, he is once again exactly the same as Hakfel Inspired. Now we're at the faction cards part of this warband review. For faction objectives, Death's Bounty gives you a massive free glory for taking 4 more enemy fighters out of action. While this is useless against 3-fighter warbands, this feels fairer than Annihilation. Risky, but I like it. Your usage may vary, however. Death's Domain is just too difficult for this warband to score, even in round 2. Controlling 2 or more objectives in enemy territory is just tough with a movement-free warband while uninspired. For faction objectives top picks, Deathly Blooms is a fairly easy and reliable end-phase objective, 1 glory for holding an objective in enemy territory. Let down slightly with the uninspired movement of 3, but still a reasonable ask even in round 1. Dread Harvest gives you 1 glory for having 2 or more enemy fighters out of action. Simple, but effective. Ethereal Hunters is a surge which gives 1 glory for charging through a blocked or occupied hex. Incredibly easy, especially with the occupied hex part. Charge through your own fighters to score this. Inevitable Advance is another good end phase objective. Score 1 glory for having each surviving friendly fighter with move or charge tokens. Slightly more difficult team effort, but still easy glory. Play around with token applying cards for even faster scoring. Masked Blade is a surge you can score for making any attack action with a supporting fighter for 1 glory. Even if you miss, you can still score this, and thanks to the Patrician's Deathbeat reaction, it's very easy and fast to score. Piercing Blow is faction what armor. Score 1 glory for making a successful attack action with Cleave. You have Hackfell, who gains Cleave upon inspiring, and there are a lot of upgrades that give Cleave 2 now. Scythe Down is another commonly seen aggro objective, 2 glory for having 3 or more enemy fighters out of action. It's probably a toss-up between running this or Death's Bounty, as running both will lead to a very bricky deck. In the end, it will come down to player choice and who you feel you are more likely to face in terms of enemy warbands. The Hunt pursues his faction Swift Advance. Gain 1 glory for having all your fighters in enemy territory, simple and very doable. Unstoppable Force is scored when you kill an enemy fighter during a charge action. This surge is good, but the low damage of the warband makes it a little questionable in elite warband metas. Still nice, yet may take some investment to score via either upgrades or repeated charges on a single target. Vengeance of Nagash is a toned-down victorious duel. Score 1 glory as a surge for killing an enemy leader. It's not amazing, but I still put it down as good in my book, as any of your fighters can score it. For faction Gambits, another 18 beat reduces damage by 1 for enemy range 1 or 2 attack actions in the next activation, as long as the Patrician is alive. It even works on multiple attack actions via Scything, but that range 1 and 2 limitation is a bit of a downside for me. Otherwise, this card is fine if you want to play more defensively with the Wraithcreepers. Somnolent Beat is fine, but extremely limited in the current Diachasm meta. -1 movement to enemy fighters in the next activation to a minimum of 0. Can only be played when the Patrician is alive, but there are so many +2 movement cards at the moment that I don't feel this is worth running at all. Stuff of Nightmares is a 1 in 3 chance to do 1 damage to an enemy fighter. Pick an enemy fighter within 2 hexes and do 1 damage on the roll of a smash. Considering the limited range, this would have been marginally better if it worked on crits too. For faction Gambit's top picks, Deadly Vengeance is an interesting reaction. Play this after a friendly fighter is taken out of action, make an attack action with that fighter. Not only is it guaranteed, but it also doesn't have to target the attacker. Flexible, reliable, and can make surprise attacks your opponent may not expect. Drifting Death pushes up to 2 friendly fighters 1 hex towards the nearest enemy fighter. Extra mobility is always loved to see, especially when it affects more than 1 fighter at once. Feathered Beat is my jam. You can only play this if the Patrician is alive, but it makes all your enemy attack actions have the Fury characteristic instead in the next activation. Screws up magic attacks, but really tones down the accuracy for a lot of enemy attacks. Heart Piercer gives 1 of your fighters Cleave in the next activation. Great for confirming kills and scoring Piercing Blow. Horrifying Shriek is a limited faction distraction. Choose an enemy fighter within 3 hexes of a friendly fighter and push them 1 hex. It's very nice. Methodical Attacks is faction Tireless Assault for my Shadespire fans. After a failed attack action, attack again. You can also use this to attack a different target for some reason if you choose. Still, always run this. Unending Pursuit is faction Sidestep. Great for keeping within harassment range of the opponent. For faction upgrades, Carrion Companion is Tome of Offerings, but only for Hackfell. The fact the target needs to be adjacent when taken out of action is just unfortunate as well. Fine, but not really something you would take regularly. Shame it wasn't for Drepur instead. Death Grasp is for Drepur and gives him a range 1 free smash 2 damage attack, which gives the target a move token after the attack action. The move token application is good, but the range isn't. I would just rather focus on buffing his main attack instead of using this range 1 attack action with the movement free base. Memories of the Hunt is faction Great Speed. It is fine, but there are now so many good +1 move universal cards that I'd just recommend taking those instead. Murderous Accomplice is limited to Grodig and lets him be pushed 2 hexes after another friendly fighter's charge action, as long as he can get adjacent to the target. It's just very limiting and locked into an alright but fragile fighter. Tearing Claws is only for the Patrician and gives them a range 1, 2 Fury, 2 damage attack action with Cleave and Ensnare. The keyword bonuses are nice, but 2 Fury isn't. For faction upgrades top picks, Bitter Strength is Faction Great Strength. Another auto include. Deathly Vigor is Faction Great Fortitude. Once again, always take. Murder Pact is slightly complicated but very good. The equipped fighter gets +1 damage if they have a supporting fighter, or +1 dice to friendly fighter attack actions if this equipped fighter is a supporting fighter. Really flexible if you're good with your positioning. Set up for +1 damage in an activation, then in the next activation, you now get a dice bonus. Pall of Fear makes enemy fighters with range 1 and 2 attack actions have -1 dice when targeting the equipped fighter. Very strong, can go on any friendly fighter, and helps with durability. The Point of Death is Faction Awakened Weapon, but only on a charge. Balanced, but really strong. Now for the deck section. Once again, there are no universal cards, so this is just a fun championship format deck that I think you'll have a lot of fun with and is quite successful. Once again, you can find the deck link in the episode description below. This championship format deck is an aggro deck because these guys are basically really good at aggro. Once again, you have basically objectives focused around killing, as this warband does it really well. But interestingly enough, their faction objectives reward you for just attacking with supports or having cleave, so that's what I've kind of focused on. Bold Conquest only needs your leader to charge onto any objective hex, which doesn't require killing. Surge of Aggression, because you will generally need the primacy in general, and you've got clean kills because what you'll be doing is focusing down on fighters until they're out of action because of your damage too. It's consistent but low damage. Then you've also got Gathered Momentum because you can easily score that with minimal movement cards. For Gambits, once again, they mostly focus on mobility and even like keyword application with like Heartpiercer for cleave. Spectral Wings helps with mobility and scoring Gathered Momentum, whereas Blood-Soaked Ground is a really interesting addition because if you kill an enemy fighter in an objective, you can flip it and help shut down objective play while also still getting a Spent Glory, helping, get for kills what you would do normally. Then you've got Distraction and Nightmare in the Shadows, so you have 3 push cards to basically mess up positioning but help you inspire as well, and also shut down any objectives that your opponent is trying to capture if you miss with your attacks. The upgrade deck focuses mainly on, damage, because the warband does need some damage. But you've got basically 4 cards that give you +1 damage. Bitter Strength, Great Strength, Glory Seeker, and Murder Pact, where Murder Pact will catch people out because of how varied you can use it. Then it also has enough upgrades to make you quite defensive with Deathly Vigor, Great Fortitude, and then Pall of Fear. Because if you dunk that on your leader, he basically becomes really difficult to kill. I was toying about with either Vision of Glory or Survival Instincts for that guard, but I feel you get more out of just Vision of Glory for charging again, because once again you've got range 2, and even if a range 2 fighter drives you back, you can always use the Patrician to use the drumbeat to get you back into range. And then once again you've got Predator's Trinket to help you score your objective that needs you to succeed with Cleave, but having free smash with Cleave is just super reliable. And then you've got the Point of Death for that reroll when you're charging. So it's really solid. But yeah, overall it's a fun deck that is designed to get in the opponent's face and just be an oppressive menace, because your opponent will have to kill them to get rid of them, and if your opponent can't kill them, you'll just, slaughter the opponent. For the warband overview, Drepur's Wraithcreepers are a simple but fun warband. They do a good job at being a persistent aggro threat that your opponent cannot easily hide from or ignore. The warband packs a load of reach and accuracy, making them fairly good at their job. The movement of 3 is offset by the majority of range 2 attacks, so that they have a threat range of 5 hexes, and their easy Inspire condition means getting to movement 4 won't be hard at all. Hackfell and Grodig are rather flimsy, with their 3 wounds and 1 dodge, but at least they gain 2 dodge when inspired. They lack big damage, but make up for it with consistent kills, reliable attacks, and pressure. The Patrician's Deathbeat tunes are not to be underestimated. For warband pros, they're straightforward and fun to use, great at aggro with persistent pressure, and have great threat range, mobility, and accuracy. For the warband cons, they're limited in scope, basically an aggro-only warband. Half of the warband is susceptible to be taken out early with only 1 dodge and 3 wounds. All have the Hunter's Glaives but don't have the Hunter keyword, as having the Hunter keyword would open up a lot of aspects for them to explore. and then currently they're the only ghost warband that are affected and hurt by lethal hexes, although this can be ignored if the Thorns of the Briar Queen and Lady Howell's Mournflight get this rules changed as well, because then they'll all be even. In summary, Drepur's Wraithcreepers are a really good warband to start the game with as a new player. They're simple but effective and reliable. They suffer against more elite opponents and really feel that 2 damage baseline, yet this is easily abated with lots of faction and universal cards to help bring their damage up. Even more experienced players will be able to maximize the pressure and the threat range the warband offers, using the copious range to attack actions to set up webs of counterattacks for unwitting opponents charging in. You must remember, however, that they basically only do aggro and hold objective play at a stretch, so fitting in some passive glory that doesn't rely on killing may be a bit of a struggle. The lack of having the hunter keyword also hurts a bit too in terms of universal card synergy in the current Diachasm meta. Now for the starter set overview. The Warhammer Underworlds starter set is a really good way to get into the game. I keep saying it because it's true. Simplified rules and easy to learn warbands make it a good point to use this to hop into the game at any point during a season. Not only that, but this starter set is very easy to play with friends or family straight out of the box. For the pros, it's a great introduction to Warhammer Underworlds. Simple yet strong starter set warbands and has good board selection, while also brings them back into usage for the main competitive scene. For the cons, it has no universal cards and missing key rules like lethal hexes and other objective classes, which players may find confusing when they branch into the main game. There are some minor niggles like price in the UK where it's £40, which is £10 less than the core set currently is. If you add the Essentials pack into that, which I'll cover shortly, that's £12 added on, so 52, so £2 more. But the trade-off is you get 28 more universal cards, as the Essentials pack has 60, whereas the starter set only has 32. I would have loved this to be 35, but I still think 40 is a good price, and I'm so glad it isn't 45. Now, finally, we have the Essentials card pack review. So this is a nice way to get universal cards as a new, returning, or existing player. It has cards from Shadespire to Beastgrave at 60, so 20 upgrades, gambits, and objectives, all in one neat package, which will be usable for you. As with the starter set, everything will be Championship and Alliance legal. The only iffy thing is Vanguard, because Vanguard only works with the current season, so I'm not sure if it will allow the essential stuff, but I believe it should, but we'd have to wait and see. That's the only thing I'm unsure on, but everything will be usable in competitive play. For players with the old cards, you can still use them. So if you have the Shadespire and Nightbolt versions, you can still use those cards. You would just have to refer to the up-to-date wording in the Essentials pack. So you may just want to buy the new cards so you don't have to reference the new wording all the time. Even then, it's only minor changes just to fit in with the current game terminology. It also oddly comes in a huge card sleeve. Nothing good or bad, just that it's surprisingly difficult to open and reuse without destroying the box. It's nice, it's really big, but yeah, just weird. For the universal cards, there are only universal cards, so I'll quickly go over them because I've generally covered most of these cards as I've been, making content since Shadespire and the game started, so I'll be more brief with these. But I do have my article and obviously the HD card images, so you can just pause and look and see what appeals to you most. For universal objectives, Annihilation is alright, the aggro player dream. Conquest is another aggro player's old staple. It's reliable, but 2 glory in the final end phase isn't so great anymore. Denial punishes opponents who hide away, but becomes very punishable in a best-of-3 game. Hold objective 1 to 5 are your old staples, great for new players learning the game. Making a statement is for the bold, can be scored if only one objective is in enemy territory for sneaky players. No Mercy is nice but struggles to be good while elite warbands are in ascendance. Planter Standard is fine for those with aggressive leaders who can afford to stand on an objective in enemy territory. For universal upgrades top picks, Branching Fate is great to see back, oddly quite reliable with 3 dice attacks, having about a 50% chance to go off. The Briar Queen is pleased. Great Gains is back. It's really good. Passive glory your opponent can't stop as long as you get 5 or more glory. It does need restricting though. Path to Victory is probably one of my favourite Beastgrave cards, great to see in the Essentials pack as it slots into a lot of playstyles. Pure Carnage is a fun one, pretty much excellent for Horde/Swarm warbands that expect to die a lot. Garruk's Reavers love this, but mainly Zarbag's Gits. Strong Start is an elite aggro staple, unfortunate if you draw into it during the middle of the round, but otherwise nice to see back. Supremacy is the old reliable for hold objective players. Tactical Supremacy 1 to 2 and 3 to 4 add more strength to the hold objective play. 2 glory for 2 specific objectives, that is always a good deal thanks to the many mobility cards in Diachasm. Victorious Duel is another aggro staple. Run if your leader plans to go on the hunt for enemy leaders. 3 glory for a kill is great in the right deck, like with Mollog. For universal objectives, Daylight Robbery is back. Again! It's fine, and oh, it's restricted. Oh dear. Grievous Riposte only works on range 1 attacks if you rolled a crit to defend. Not that reliable even with the 2 damage payoff. Healing Potion is great to see back. I think the game needs permanent cards like this. Will it go into every deck? No, but it's good to see having solid healing cards for those who want to run them. Keen Avarice is good but needs an enemy fighter on an objective, which results in it being quite situational and meta-dependent. Misdirection is your standard Swapperoonie, it's just fine. Shifting Shards is some nice objective hex movement as long as you remember it has to be an empty objective, will probably become more appealing once Restless Prize rotates out. For Universal Gambits top picks, Center of Attention is simply amazing, the best card art in the pack too. Hold Objectives gives and Hold Objective takes away. Cry of Thunder is back to being a threat again. Commanding Stride is great for leader-centric builds, that free hex push is really useful. Confusion is a classic swap card, pretty much essential for hold objective play. Countercharge is a sneaky way to get surprise defensive supports in, very awesome with Thorns of the Briar Queen and Drepur's Wraithcreepers. Determined Effort is your standard +1 attack dice, simple but effective. Duel of Wits is such a good draw 2 card, however with how strong draw cards are in Diachasm, this may end up restricted. Flickering Steps, crits to push, yes! Generally speaking, you'll need to get 1 to 2 pushes out of this, or make history and roll 8 crits. Just pray to me if you roll no crits when you play this card. Inspired Attack is another great aggro card that has seen a lot of play in Warbands that inspire quickly and easily. Godsworn Hunt like this. Inspired Command is a nice way to get an extra push or free guard token. Lethal Ward is classic pin damage for sitting in objectives. The Wormspat may have just had some life injected back into them. Mighty Swing is back. Turn into the Beyblade of Doom you always wanted to be. Mirror Move has reflected into existence. Sneaky tech players rejoice. No Time is just a good card, namely for hold objective players. Secure that end phase. Sidestep is your basic push card, flexible and strong. For universal upgrades, Army of One is really useful for people building Lone Warrior decks and Arena Mortis, I guess. Earthing Stone is if you really dislike hold objective players. Great Speed is good but has been power crept out of use. Horrifying Armor is good but the loss of 1 wound just makes you too vulnerable to dying. Leechstone is for players who really don't like playing against your Thari's Guardians. Regenerating Charm is really slow healing. I've never been a fan of cards that only work at the start of a round. Shardcaller is situational start of the round objective swapping. For universal upgrades top picks, Bag of Tricks helps you fish for that key card. Also a nice way for Chaos Wild Hunt to inspire a fighter. Champion's Fortitude gives you a single defensive reroll, really strong. Dark Darts is fairly reliable range-free cleave shooting. Duelist Speed is so strong and flexible. Hold objective and aggro players will love this returning. Fighter's Ferocity is more damage on the roll of a crit. Hey! Really good for range 3+ fighters. Glory Seeker is +1 damage against 4 wound or greater targets. Once again, range 3+ fighters love this, and Glory Seeker will do exceedingly well in the current Diachasm meta. Great Fortitude, +1 wounds, what's not to like? Great Strength, +1 strength, all the strength. Guardian Glaive is another good attack action upgrade that has seen a lot of use in hold objective decks due to its reliability. Mutating Maul is a nice Nightvault staple, bringing more reliable cleave into the game. Potion of Grace is a good way to get a double move action out of a fighter in a single round. Zalbag's Gits can make great use of it too. Quickening Greaves, whoo boy! Hold objective play is back on the table, essential recovery. Swordbreaker is just another consistent attack action upgrade and can pop other attack action upgrades with crits! For the Essentials Pack overview, all in all I really like the Essentials Pack for Warhammer Underworlds. I do like the new card design, as seeing more art on cards is always a pleasure of mine. Objectives are neater too, with the number of the glory inside the glory token for an objective. Here's a comparison of the new and old styles of cards. As for the new fighter card designs, I'm not really a fan. They show more art, but I think they've just been redesigned when there was no need. The interesting thing is they show what looks to be the Grand Alliance that each faction belongs to, but all of this is probably for future stuff. It's just weird they've implemented it already where we're going to get a design change with the next season, but we've already seen it now. Well, that's what I'm guessing anyway from what we can see. Just a bit strange. Outside of card design, I think the majority of the cards are great picks for new and existing players. This also allows greater design space for core sets by meaning cards like Hold Objectives 1 to 5 aren't needed anymore, as we saw with the Diachasm core set. Great Gains and Jewel of Wits worry me, but that's an issue for future Forsaken and Restricted lists with the current Diachasm meta. Still, the pack gives a huge boost to Hold Objective play and makes them much more stable again, even pushing them back into Ascendance, I'd say. Even Aggro got some old staples too, so that they're still on the same level playing field. So would I recommend getting this? Yes, the Essentials card pack is essential for new Warhammer Underworlds players. It's a great way to get a solid card boost, especially if you only have the Warhammer Underworlds starter set. Even veteran players will want it due to the new card art, updated wording, as well as just a nice way to have easy doubles for your collection to play multiple decks at once, either with friends or opponents. It's also at a great price. £12 in the UK is cheaper than Power and Bound, which was £15 2 years ago. This is honestly a really good move. If you want to buy the Essentials card pack and the new Warhammer Underworld starter set, you can get them both via my affiliate link into Element Games in the episode description below. This will net you a 15 to 25% discount, all at no additional cost to yourself, while helping to support me and the channel. So until then, dear viewer, remember to learn how to play Warhammer Underworlds with this new starter set and keep your card collection essential with the new Essentials card pack. But remember, you'll still need to learn how to roll a crit.